Have you ever stopped in the middle of a sentence because you didn't know if you should say to or for? Like, your idea is ready, your mouth wants to speak, but your brain suddenly freezes? If that sounds familiar, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to make to and for feel easy, natural, and stress-free, the way real English actually works.
Yes, because this is not a grammar lesson from a textbook. This is real English for real life. By the end of this podcast, you'll stop overthinking to and for, you'll understand them by feeling, not memorizing, and most importantly, you'll feel more confident speaking English in daily conversations.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. My name is Olivia, and I'm really happy you decided to press play today. Whether you're listening while walking, driving, cooking, or just relaxing, I want you to know something first: this space is for you. This is not a place where you need to feel pressure, stress, or fear of making mistakes. This is a place where English is calm, friendly, and human. This podcast is made especially for people who are learning English and sometimes feel overwhelmed by grammar rules. Maybe you've studied English before. Maybe you understand when you listen, but speaking still feels uncomfortable. If that's you, you're not alone. Many learners feel exactly the same way, and that's why this podcast exists. Today, we're talking about two very small words that create big confusion: to and for. You see them everywhere. In conversations, messages, emails, podcasts, videos. And even though they look simple, they often stop people from speaking because they don't want to make a mistake. That moment of hesitation is very real. In this episode, our goal is simple. We want you to feel how to and for work in real English. Not by memorizing rules, but by listening to natural conversation. By the end of this podcast, you won't feel perfect, and that's okay, but you will feel calmer, clearer, and more confident when these words appear.
Hey everyone, I'm Jack, and I want to add something important right away. If you've ever thought, why do native speakers use to and for so easily, but I have to think so much? That question makes complete sense. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is how English is usually taught. Most people learn English by studying rules first. And rules can be useful, but they don't help much in real conversations. When you're talking to someone, you don't have time to think about grammar. You need to express an idea, a feeling, a reason, right now. That's where stress appears. What we're doing today is changing the focus. Instead of asking, "Is this correct?" we're asking, "Does this feel natural?" We'll talk about daily life, small situations, simple stories, the kind of English people actually use every day. This is English for communication, not English for tests. So as you listen, don't try to remember everything. Just listen. Let the words repeat. Let your brain notice patterns quietly. This is how confidence grows. And if you stay with us until the end, you'll notice that to and for don't feel so scary anymore. They start to feel familiar, and that's the first step to fluency.
One thing I've noticed after years of helping people learn English is that the biggest problem is not vocabulary. It's not pronunciation. It's hesitation. That small pause before speaking, when your mind suddenly goes blank and you start translating everything in your head. That's the moment when English feels heavy instead of natural. For many learners, words like to and for become mental blocks. They're simple, but because they appear so often, students feel like they must use them perfectly. And that pressure creates fear. People start avoiding sentences just because they don't want to choose the wrong word. They know what they want to say, but English doesn't come out. Another issue is that students often learn these words in isolation. One day it's to with a list of rules. Another day it's for with more rules. But real English doesn't work like that. In real life, these words live inside sentences, emotions, intentions. When you separate them, they stop making sense. And over time, this confusion can affect confidence. Some learners stop speaking as much. Others feel frustrated and think they're not improving. But the truth is, they're not failing, they just haven't been exposed to English in a way that feels human and realistic.
Yeah, and I want to talk about something very common that happens in the mind of a learner. When you're listening, everything feels okay. You understand most of the message. But the moment you need to speak, your brain switches to grammar mode. You start analyzing instead of communicating. That's exhausting. A lot of students tell me they can write better than they can speak. And that's because writing gives you time. Speaking doesn't. When you're talking, you need automatic reactions. You need English to flow without stopping every 2 seconds to think about small words. Another problem is comparison. Learners listen to native speakers and think they speak so fast, so naturally. But they forget that natives don't think about rules, they think about meaning. And that difference creates frustration. People start believing fluency is something special that only others can reach. That's why today's episode is important. We're not fixing grammar, we're fixing mindset. We're helping your brain relax around 2 and 4. When your mind feels safe, your English becomes faster, clearer, and more confident. And that's exactly what we want for you.
When we talk about the word to, I like to imagine it as a direction. There is always a sense of movement, even when you're not physically moving. It's like your idea is traveling somewhere. This is why to feels so natural in English. It helps guide the listener to the destination of your thought. Sometimes the movement is physical. You go to work, you walk to the store, you travel to another city. But very often, the movement happens inside your mind. You decide to learn English. You want to talk to someone. You try to explain an idea. In all of these situations, it connects you with a goal. What's important for learners is not to label these uses as rules, but as feelings. When your sentence has a direction, when something is going towards something else, to usually appears naturally. You're not choosing it because it's correct, you're choosing it because it fits the intention. And when you start noticing this in real conversations, English becomes lighter. You stop asking, is this grammar right, and start asking, where is this idea going? That small change can completely transform how confident you feel when speaking.
Yeah, and I want to add that to is deeply connected to purpose. Every time you hear it, there's usually a reason behind the action. You're not just doing something, you're doing it for a direction. That's why to appears so often in everyday English. Think about how people talk naturally. They say things like, I need to talk to you, or I'm trying to learn to speak better, or this helps me to focus. None of these sentences feel academic. They feel human, because they reflect intention. One mistake learners make is overthinking. They pause and analyze instead of trusting the flow of the sentence. But when you allow it to guide your intention, speaking becomes smoother. You start building sentences forward instead of stopping in the middle. So as you listen today, don't try to remember examples. Just notice the pattern. When there's a destination, a purpose, or a next step, it feels like the natural bridge. And the more you hear it this way, the faster your brain will react in real conversations.
When we hear the word of for, the energy of the sentence changes. Instead of movement, we start thinking about connection. Someone benefits. Someone receives something. Or there's a clear reason behind an action. For answers the quiet question, who or what is this helping? In everyday life, for appears when we talk about people. You buy a gift for a friend. You cook dinner for your family. You wait for someone you care about. In these moments, for creates a relationship between the action and the person affected by it. It feels personal. Another important feeling behind a for is motivation. You do something for a reason, not just because. You study for a goal. You practice English for improvement. This use of for gives meaning to effort. It tells the listener why something matters. When learners understand a for this way, they stop seeing it as a grammar problem. It becomes a storytelling tool. You're not just describing actions anymore, you're explaining purpose, care, and intention in a very human way.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that for often slows the sentence down emotionally. It adds context. It tells us that something is not random. There is thought behind it. That's why for feels very common in conversations about daily life, plans, and relationships. You hear it a lot when people explain choices. I did this for you. This is for my future. I'm doing this for my health. These sentences are not about direction, they're about value. For helps express what matters to us. Another thing learners don't always notice is that for creates stability. Unlike to, which moves forward, for stays focused on the result or the receiver. When you speak with for, you're grounding the sentence emotionally. So when you're unsure which word to choose, listen to your message. If you're talking about benefit, reason, or who receives something, for will usually feel right. And when you trust that feeling, your English becomes more natural and confident.
When you start listening to real English conversations, you realize something interesting. To and for often appear in the same moment, even in the same sentence. Native speakers don't stop to think about them. They simply follow the message they want to communicate. For example, when people talk about plans, responsibilities, or daily routines, both words naturally appear. You might hear someone say they're going to the store to buy something for their family. That sentence flows because each word has its own role, and together they create a complete picture. What's powerful here is that English becomes less about choosing between two options and more about building meaning step by step. To moves the idea forward. For it explains who benefits or why it matters. When you listen with this mindset, the confusion slowly disappears. This is why exposure is so important. The more you hear to and for used naturally, the less you question yourself. Your brain starts predicting what comes next, and that's when speaking becomes easier.
Exactly. And in real life, English rarely comes in perfect, short sentences. People connect ideas. They explain actions and reasons together. That's why to and for work like a team. You hear this especially when people talk about goals. Someone might say they're learning English to communicate better for their job. That sentence is not academic, it's emotional. It talks about direction and benefit at the same time. Another important thing is rhythm. When you use to and for naturally, your sentences sound smoother and more confident. Listeners don't feel confusion because the structure feels familiar to them, even if the vocabulary is simple. So instead of asking yourself which word is correct, try asking what your message needs. Are you moving toward something? Are you explaining a reason or a benefit? When you think in meaning instead of rules, both words fall into place naturally.
One thing I really want to normalize is making mistakes. Especially with small words like to and for. These mistakes are not signs of failure, they are signs of progress. If you're using these words, it means you're actually trying to speak, and that matters more than perfection. Many learners feel embarrassed when they realize they used the wrong word. They replay the sentence in their head and think about it for hours. But the truth is, in real conversations, people understand you anyway. Communication doesn't break because of one small word. Another common issue is silence. Some students stop mid-sentence because they're unsure. They think stopping is better than being wrong. But silence creates more fear than a mistake ever will. Speaking, even imperfectly, builds confidence over time. So instead of focusing on errors, focus on clarity. Ask yourself, did the person understand me? If the answer is yes, then your English is working. That mindset shift can remove a lot of pressure from speaking.
Yeah, and I want to talk about how mistakes actually help your brain. Every time you choose the wrong word, your brain notices the difference later. That moment of awareness is learning. It's much stronger than memorizing rules from a book. Another thing is that native speakers don't correct every mistake. Most of the time, they just continue the conversation. That's because meaning is more important than form. Learners often think everyone is judging them, but in reality, people are just listening. Also, mistakes create patterns. Over time, you start recognizing which situations feel right for to and which feel right for. This doesn't happen overnight, it happens through repetition and exposure. So don't fear mistakes. Welcome them. They are proof that you're using English in real life. And the more you speak, the more natural these small words will become, without stress, without fear.
As we get to the end of this episode, I want you to pause for a moment and notice something. You just listened to English for several minutes. You didn't stop the podcast. You didn't give up. That alone is already progress, even if it doesn't feel dramatic. Learning English is not about fast results. It's about small moments of understanding that slowly add up. Today, maybe you didn't memorize everything. That's okay. What matters is that to and for feel a little less heavy now. A little more familiar. I also want you to be kind to yourself. Language learning takes time because your brain is building new connections. Every time you listen, even passively, those connections grow stronger. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be. So take this calm feeling with you. Carry it into your next conversation, your next listening practice, your next small attempt to speak. Confidence doesn't arrive suddenly, it grows quietly.
Yeah, and I want to leave you with this thought. Fluency is not about sounding perfect. It's about feeling comfortable expressing yourself. When you stop fighting the language, English starts working with you instead of against you. Don't wait until you feel ready to speak. Readiness comes after action, not before. Every sentence you try, every mistake you make, every word you use, all of it is part of the journey. If this episode helped you even a little, that means you're moving forward. Keep listening. Keep exposing yourself to real English. Let your ear guide you more than rules. And remember, we're here with you. This podcast is a safe space to grow, to listen, and to practice without pressure. You're doing better than you think, and we'll see you in the next episode.